After the liver loaf fiasco for my last 1940s meal plan video, y'all said that I should have tried a different, less objectionable meal plan. So I am ready to be hurt again. I selected another menu from the How to Feed Your Family of 5 on $15 a week section, this time for a Monday, and it features a completely meatless list of meals for the day. In the section on wartime cookery, the cookbook suggests serving meatless meals.
The cookbook lists some meat alternatives such as beans, peas, and nuts,
but it warns that entire dependence should not be placed on these meat substitute dishes, but they may well be used 2 or 3 times a week. Other Monday menus in the cookbook feature meat, so it doesn't seem to be a focus for this cookbook. However, meatless days were encouraged by the US government during World War II. According to an article on PubMed, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt raised the idea in 1942 that if a meatless day were observed 1 day a week in the US, it would free up 30 to 40 ships that could be used for military purposes instead of transporting meat from Argentina, New Zealand, and Australia to the US. The mayor of New York City asked the hotels and restaurants to make Tuesday a meatless day. Los Angeles adopted meatless Tuesdays at restaurants, schools, hotels, and clubs, with reported near 100% compliance in 1942. But the rest of the US largely did not observe meatless days. All right, time to get started on this meatless menu. For breakfast, it's grapefruit halves, cornmeal mush, top milk, cinnamon toast, milk, and coffee. Now, under the alternative dishes section, it says that cornflakes or other prepared cereal with fresh strawberries or raspberries can be substituted in warm weather, and omit the grapefruit. It's July when I'm recording this, so I'll be making those substitutions. The cookbook has instructions for the cinnamon toast on page 157. I'll be using whole wheat bread for the toast because there's a section in the cookbook that recommends adding whole grains to your menus. The cookbook states that there wasn't any expectation that wheat would be scarce during the war like it was during World War I, but it says that the use of whole grain flours is highly recommended as a safeguard for the diet as it becomes limited in other respects. I no longer have a traditional toaster, so I'll be toasting the bread in my toaster oven. Spread hot toast with butter and sprinkle generously with a mixture of sugar and cinnamon. Place on the top shelf of the oven or under the broiler just long enough to melt the sugar. I'll be using instantaneous coffee again to save time and energy, which I'll need to cook the other meals. Finally, I poured a bowl of cornflakes and topped it off with some sliced strawberries. And this was the completed breakfast. Breakfast doesn't get much more American than this. Now, I don't believe I had heard of the term top milk before reading this cookbook. According to Merriam-Webster, top milk refers to the upper layer of milk in a container enriched by whatever cream has risen. So if I understand correctly, it's light cream. So I used cream and milk on my cereal, which is something that I do anyway. That's how I ate cereal growing up. We didn't have it with just plain milk, we had it with cream as well. We didn't usually get fruit on top of our cereal though, it was usually just the cereal. This sounds really good to me. I take that back, I feel like we did do bananas, but berries not so much. That's really good. I guess oftentimes these days people have more of like a flavored cereal, so maybe it was more common to add fruit when they had more plain cereals like just cornflakes or something. That was really good. I'm gonna have to start adding strawberries to my cornflakes. The cinnamon toast is another thing that I had often growing up. This is a little fancier though because we would usually just spread the butter on the toast, let it melt, and then sprinkle the cinnamon sugar on top. We didn't pop it into the oven to melt the sugar. So this is basically the cinnamon toast of my childhood taken to the next level. Reminiscent of my childhood. That's pretty good. The sugar on top got a little bit crispy from the broiling. I feel like this whole meal is a kid's dream. I think my kids are gonna love this breakfast. Minus the coffee, of course. I find it interesting that you get the milk with the cereal and then also you have a glass of milk too, but it is appreciated with the toast because the toast can be a little more dry and then you drink the milk. It's good. I added some milk to the coffee. I don't really drink black coffee. Well, we're definitely off to a strong start with breakfast. That was delicious. I personally would prefer something savory with my breakfast, but this meal actually had a decent amount of protein for a meatless one. I don't typically eat meat with my breakfast anyway, so this isn't vastly different than what I normally eat. I think that this is probably more calories than I usually eat. I just don't usually have a huge appetite at breakfast, so this is good. This will keep me going while I cook all the rest of the food. Coffee is decaf. Now, something else that y'all commented on my last video was that I should wash the dishes as I go instead of washing a whole bunch at once, and then it won't be as overwhelming. So I'll be implementing that as I cook through this meal plan.
For my hair, I slept on pin curls like last time. Since my hair is shorter now, I was able to wear my hair mostly down. I chose a red lip again since it's so iconic for 1940s wartime. Then I just pinned back the front sections of my hair. I also wore some braided twine looking sandals, which reminded me of some 1940s styles I've seen.
I invested in a wireless mic. Now it's time to start on the lunch menu, which consists of cream of onion and potato soup. The recipe specifies to use evaporated milk, crackers, pear salad, milk, and tea. The soup will probably take the longest, so I'll start on that first. You'll need 3 cups of scalded milk, 1 cup of potato water, 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of butter, 4 medium potatoes, 4 onions, 1 tablespoon of chopped parsley, salt, and pepper. First, of course, you've got to get a pot of water going. Then prep the veggies. And of course, wash some dishes while you wait for the water to boil. Then you boil 4 medium potatoes and 4 onions together until tender. Then you drain and save the water and rub the vegetables through a coarse strainer.
I wasn't exactly sure what a coarse strainer was, so I decided to use a colander. As it turns out, it's actually pretty challenging to rub hot vegetables through a colander. I tried squishing them with a wooden spoon, which was just tedious. Then I switched to a cheese grater, but the veggies were too hot, so I switched to holding them with tongs, which was awkward, especially with the onions. I finally decided to just switch to a potato masher instead, which worked so much better, and I wish I would have used that in the first place.
Then you make a white sauce with 3 cups of milk, 1 cup of the reserved potato water, 2 tablespoons of flour, and 2 tablespoons of butter. Combine that with the potato and onion pulp. Beat with an egg beater and serve with croutons.
I decided to strain the final soup through the colander as well.
Season with 1 tablespoon of chopped parsley, salt, and pepper to taste. The directions say to serve with croutons, so I made my stovetop croutons and the recipe is on my blog. Now for the pear salad, this is from a section in the book that's specifically for wartime recipes. It calls for 6 pear halves, half a cup of diced celery, 1/4 cup of chopped pecans or hickory nuts, 6 lettuce cups, fruit juice mayonnaise. Now they have a recipe for the fruit juice mayonnaise on page 449, and I'd never heard of fruit juice mayonnaise before. But basically, first of all, you make a mayonnaise dressing, but then you add 3 tablespoons of fruit juice. They don't specify what kind of fruit juice, so I use pineapple juice, half a cup of confectioner's sugar, and 1 cup of heavy cream whipped. Then you'll also need half a cup of grated American cheese. Now, I thought that American cheese meant specifically processed cheese, but in the wartime cookery section, it says American cheese manufacturers are producing many of the types of cheese formerly imported from Europe. Some of the harder cheeses are being shipped to the armed forces, but the softer cheeses are likely to be plentiful. So I'm not sure if they mean specifically processed cheese, because they do mention processed cheese in this book, or if they're just talking about cheeses that are produced in America versus Europe. Anyway, I'm gonna use half processed cheese, half regular cheese. Then to finish the pear salad, you dice the pears and celery and mix with the chopped nuts. Then place in lettuce cups and garnish with the fruit juice mayonnaise. Sprinkle with some grated cheese and garnish each salad with 4 narrow strips of cheese. The cookbook doesn't specify how to arrange the strips, but this is what I decided to go with. I made some Irish breakfast tea, and along with some crackers and a glass of milk, that's the complete lunch menu. All right, well, this simple little lunch took a little bit longer than I thought. My feet are already hurting, so we'll see how I hold out, but I'm excited to try this lunch. The soup looks really good, so let's give it a go. That's some really comforting flavors. Really simple, but good flavors. Again, reminiscent of my childhood. I like that a lot. It would be way easier to make with some modern conveniences, or maybe like changing up the method of making it. It took like an hour to boil the potatoes and onions. Now the salad, I'm a little bit more wary about. It's just something that's not super common, I feel like, anymore. The fruit juice mayonnaise was very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of a salad dressing like that, but there's only one way to find out if it's any good. Not bad. I like the crunch from the nuts and from the celery. Overall, that's not a bad salad. I wouldn't say it's really my favorite, and I feel like the flavor payoff versus the effort to make it wasn't quite there for me. I just wonder if they're going for almost a Waldorf style salad without the meat. Not bad though. I will say I've made like a few of these types of salad. These must have been popular back in like the 40s to even through the 70s to serve it in a lettuce cup. I think that must have just been for presentation purposes, because honestly, like, how are you supposed to eat this lettuce? How are you supposed to like finish eating this and then at the end like nibble on it? But whatever, still a good salad. Now the recipe for the soup says to serve with croutons. The menu said crackers, but it didn't say to omit the croutons, so I decided to do both. I think it goes really well with the croutons, but I'll try it with the cracker too. I just did saltine crackers. There's a nice crunch from the saltine crackers, but there's more flavor with the croutons, so I personally prefer those. But you don't have to go through the extra step of making croutons with the crackers, of course. I'm going to add some of my milk to my tea, because I like a milk tea. Please bless that this caffeine will give me enough energy to make supper. It is quite a rich tasting soup, so having a break with the fresh salad, it is nice. I can see what they're doing there. Now whole wheat rolls are on the dinner menu, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started on those because they need to rise. This is another recipe in the wartime recipe section, and it calls for 1 cake of yeast. 1 cake of yeast is equal to 3 packets of yeast, but I'm gonna make half a recipe because I don't need 24 rolls, even though my kids would probably gladly eat them all. You'll also need 1 1/4 cups of lukewarm water, 1 cup of milk, 3 tablespoons of shortening, 1/4 cup of honey, 1 tablespoon of salt, 4 cups of flour, and 4 cups of whole wheat flour. You soften the yeast in lukewarm water. Scald the milk and add the shortening, honey, and salt.
I ground the wheat flour using my flour mill. This wouldn't have been available to home cooks in the 1940s, since home grain mills wouldn't be widely available until later. Add the dissolved yeast and flour. Knead about 10 minutes. Let rise until light. While the dough is rising, I'm going to take a little breather before I begin on dinner. Oh my gosh, my feet hurt so bad. I'm gonna read a little more of The Robe, which I started in my last video. This was on the New York Times bestseller list, I believe in 1942. I actually read this book as a teen or young adult, and it wasn't my favorite, but it was really dramatic.
The full menu for dinner is stuffed cabbage leaves, tomato sauce, buttered peas, carrot sticks, whole wheat rolls, baked caramel custards, milk, and coffee. At this point, the dough for the rolls was done rising, so I shaped them, then covered and allowed to rise. For the stuffed cabbage leaves, you'll need 1 cabbage, cooking fat, butter, parsley, spices, 1 cup of breadcrumbs, 3 eggs, and 1 chopped onion. This recipe isn't super precise. It doesn't give measurements for some of the ingredients, and it also doesn't indicate what spices to use, so I'll be using at least salt and pepper. I'll see if there's anything else that I want to throw in there. You place a thin piece of cheesecloth in the bottom of a bowl and lay the large cabbage leaves in it. Then you chop the middle of the cabbage fine and saute it in the fat until it is yellow.
This is the 5th onion that I processed today.
Remove it from the fire.
I didn't use all of this. I'll save it for later.
Add a little chopped parsley, spices, breadcrumbs, eggs, and onion. The general rule is to use 1 teaspoon of salt per pound of meat, so I used that much here. Place this mixture inside the large cabbage leaves and tie up the cabbage by tying together the 4 corners of the cloth. Place in a pan of boiling salted water and boil until the cabbage leaves are tender, about 35 minutes. At this point, the cloverleaf rolls were done rising, so I brushed them with melted butter and popped them into the oven. When the cabbage was done boiling, I transferred it to a baking dish. Then I removed the cheesecloth, poured a little melted butter over it, and sprinkled some fine breadcrumbs on top, and baked for 5 minutes. Serve with tomato sauce. For the tomato sauce, you put 1 quart of fresh or canned tomatoes, 1 slice of onion, and 8 cloves on the fire and cook for 20 minutes. Then you brown the fat in the frying pan, add the flour and cook until smooth and brown, stirring constantly. Add the tomatoes, cook for 3 minutes, season with salt and pepper, and pass through a strainer fine enough to hold back the seeds. I also prepared the peas and carrots, and then sliced the cabbage up. I made some coffee and poured another glass of milk, and that was dinner done. All right, I'm gonna add some butter to the rolls, a little extra to the peas as well. The rolls smelled really good while they were baking. I love how they break apart into little individual pieces. I love buttered peas. And now for the pièce de résistance, the stuffed cabbage. It's okay. I'll try it with the tomato sauce now. It's not like super flavorful. I'm gonna add more salt. The cabbage doesn't have a bad flavor, it's not good either. It's just not very tasty. It's not bad, but that was quite a bit of effort to make. I don't know if it's worth that effort. The presentation was really cool. It looks like it's a whole cabbage stuffed when it's just the leaves. It's nice to have the crunch of the carrots. I appreciate the extra protein with the glass of milk. I don't really feel a need for a second cup of coffee. Obviously, this is decaf as well, but there's either coffee or tea at every meal. I personally don't find that necessary, but maybe people drank a lot more coffee and tea back then. I don't know. I'm gonna add some of the milk to the coffee. Yeah, I guess I just don't see the need for the coffee. I wouldn't drink caffeinated coffee at this time, and so it would just be for the flavor. And like if I've already had it once in a day, I'm good usually, but I just wish that the stuffed cabbage had a little more of a savory flavor. I would maybe add some garlic. I think that would really help it out. I guess it's just not going to replace meat, but I can see what they're trying to do there. It's almost like a cabbage meatloaf. And I think I definitely should have used more salt. I think that would have helped with the flavor. The tomato sauce does help add some extra flavor, but I'm not a huge tomato sauce fan, so it kind of reminds me of putting ketchup on like meatloaf.
I think my favorite thing at this supper is the whole wheat rolls. I will also note that it's like 7:30. That's significantly later than I usually cook supper. I feel like I've been pretty much cooking most of the day, and it took a long time to complete. Granted, I haven't made several of these things before, so when you're making a new recipe, it's gonna take longer, but yeah, that took longer than I expected. So overall, that was a pretty decent supper. Not my favorite. I didn't hate it. Probably my least favorite thing was the tomato sauce because I'm not super a fan of tomatoes with cloves. I'm not sure. I guess people must love that combo, but it's not for me. But everything else was good. It was a nice, simple, hearty meal, but I probably wouldn't make the stuffed cabbage again just because the flavor payoff is not enough for all the effort. I think I'm gonna save the coffee and have an iced coffee with my dessert. Speaking of which, I better get going on the dessert if I don't want to be up until like 10. While I was cooking dinner, I made the caramel for the custards. I poured it into ramekins and swirled it around. Then I poured a custard mixture over the caramel, added some hot water to the pan, and baked until set. I turned a custard out into a serving dish, and this is how it looked. All right, the dessert is finally ready, and I'm excited to give this one a try. It smells kind of like making maple syrup, which must be from the caramel. And even though I kind of messed up on the caramel, or at least I don't think that was how you're supposed to make caramel, it still looks pretty good. But of course, the true test is in the taste. I like how it's kind of jiggly. All right, let's give it a try. I really like the texture on the custard. It's very smooth, very nice, not overly sweet, so I'm happy about that. I will say, I think that I overcooked the caramel, so it's a little darker of a caramel than I would like. It doesn't exactly taste burnt, but it's verging towards there, getting kind of like almost like a coffee flavor, which you don't necessarily want with caramel. Oh, and I was gonna have an iced coffee. Here's my iced coffee from the leftover coffee from supper. I just added the extra milk and some ice. Yum. I do really like that, but I'm a little disappointed with the caramel. I'm sure if I got used to caramelizing sugar, this could be a pretty quick and easy little dessert. Or if you left out the caramel and then just added maybe like a chocolate sauce or some fresh fruit on top, that would be really easy. I really like the texture. Some of the sugar did stay a little bit hard, probably because I messed something up. That's something I would make again. So overall, I enjoyed most of the food on this meatless Monday meal plan. Probably the biggest disappointment again would be the dinner with the cabbage. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't my favorite. I also feel like I was getting plenty to eat today. These meals definitely felt comforting and hearty. I appreciated the extra milk at meals for added protein because there was no meat. So I felt pretty good throughout the day besides just being so tired. After supper, my feet hurt so bad and my back was hurting while I was washing up some dishes. And I still have dishes left to wash. Speaking of which, I think that it did help to kind of wash as I went. I did kind of fall behind during supper, but whereas it helps you to not feel overwhelmed, if you just wash as you go, it's not going to erase the work of washing everything by hand. It's still a lot of work. So I applaud everybody in the 1940s who had to wash everything by hand, and people today who still wash everything by hand. You have my respect. I will be continuing to use my dishwasher. Now to finish off those dishes, and then I can finally relax. This is where the fun begins. New York City continued at my voice.